This video is on volume for prisms and cylinders. Volume is the measure of a capacity at which something holds. So if I look at these figures right here, these are still three-dimensional figures, but if I were to fill this cylinder up with water, the amount of water that would fit into this cylinder would represent the volume. So for a prism, the volume is capital B, again, so that's the area of the base, times the height. So volume equals the B times H, or the area of the base times the height. For a cylinder, it's pi r squared times the height. So if I look at this prism right here, capital B is the area of the base, so my base is a triangle. So I need to use 1/2 times base times height. But if you notice here, I have this measurement of 8 inches, but I'm missing this one. And these are my base and my height. So you need to do Pythagorean theorem. So we would have for this, so here I showed for Pythagorean theorem, we would take 8 squared plus x squared equals 10 squared. So our x value would be 6 when we solve for this, and our missing side here would be 6. So for me to calculate the volume, I would do the area of the base, which is the 1/2 times base times height, so we'd have 1/2 times 6 times 8. So half of 6 is 3, and 3 times 8 is 24, so our area of the base is 24. Times our height, which is the height of the entire object, measured from base to base, so that would be 15. And when we multiply those together, we would get that it is 360. Now volume is different from area, and I rewrote everything down here so it was clearer to see. So since volume is different from area, when you're talking about volume or the capacity that something holds, that's going to be in cubic units. So we are not going to have units squared anymore. Your exponent needs to be a 3. So we should end up with, for our answer, since this was in inches, it would be 360 inches cubed, because you have units cubed. This would be units squared times, this would also include your units, and that's how we get units cubed. So that would be our final answer for our volume. So the cylinder right here, volume equals pi, our radius here is 5, so pi times r squared, and again, times the height, which goes from base to base, so you're going to multiply that by 20. So your volume is, let's set this up, volume equals pi times your r squared is 5 times the height, which is 20. So your volume is going to end up being 500 pi, and again we're using units of inches, so inches cubed. You can still leave it in pi if you're still dealing with circles. So for this one right here, we'll need to break it up into two separate shapes. Very similar to what we did in the past when we were finding the area. Sometimes you have to look at the figure and split it up into subsections in order to find the area or the volume. So if I look at this top cube right here, I can consider this my first figure, and then if I look at the bottom cube right here, I can think of that as my second figure. So if I find the volume of both, then I could add them together to get the total volume. So my first figure, the volume equals area of the base times the height. So when I look at this top picture right here, it's a prism. So if I consider this top piece, so if this is my base, to find the area I would take 6 times 5, which is 30, and then times the height of only this top piece, remember, which would be 4. So my small little prism at the top has a volume of 120 inches cubed. Then we can calculate the second portion. So volume equals area of the base. So again, now I'm only looking at the second piece. This base has measurements of 5 and 16. So for the area of this base, my capital B is going to be 5 times 16. And then my height is going to be times 12. So again, don't get mixed up here. This 16 here is for the entire object, and we're only measuring for this bottom piece, so that's why we used 12. So 5 times 16 times 12 has a volume of 960 cubic inches. So now I need to add the two volumes together, the 120 plus the 960. So we would have volume equals 120 inches cubed plus the 960. And that's going to equal 1,080 cubic inches for our total volume. One more example here. If we are trying to find the volume, so if we had an opening and I was trying to fill this up, what's the capacity at which it will hold? So as an initial shape, we don't necessarily know how to find the volume, but if we separate it into two pieces, so our first piece being the cylinder on the top, and then our second piece being the board, which is a rectangle on the bottom, so we'll find two separate volumes, then add them up. So for the cylinder, we need to take pi times the radius. So if I look at this right here, I need this radius measurement. Well, if I come down here and look at this 8 is from edge to edge, which if I look up here from edge to edge, there's my diameter. So my radius would be 4. So we have pi times 4 squared times just the height of the cylinder, which is 6. So my cylinder volume would equal 96 pi. And that's also going to be in cubic inches. Then for the rectangle, this prism down here, I look at this as my base. So volume would equal the area of the base. So capital B times H right here is what we have, which in this rectangle would be 8 times 4. And that's the area of my base. Then times the height of the whole pyramid, which in this case is 30, which gives me a total of 960 cubic inches. Now in this case, I have one measurement that's in terms of pi, so that's 96 pi for the cylinder, and then I have the prism that's 960 inches cubed. So if I'm going to try and add these together, they're not like terms, so I'm going to have to take the 96 and multiply that times pi and add that to the 960, so I get 96 pi, and remember we're going to plug that pi in, plus 960, and that's going to equal 1,080 261.6 cubic inches. And that would be my total volume for this entire shape. All right, on this next page, I have one example problem for you to try out on your own. So good luck. Make sure you're using the right formula and see what you get for your total volume.